Well, let's get into it with tonight's party panel. We've got former Trump Advisory Board member and Hoteling Risk Advisors Managing Director Jason Meister is here, along with Democrat strategist, former Biden campaign strategist, and also a man who loves to go south of the border. He wanted the president to go there for a long time.
It's all in my past.
Kevin Walling, he is back, and the host of Undoctrination. It is a wonderful podcast hosted by the glorious Olivia Rondeau. Welcome, one and all. Let's have a good discussion on this and maybe solve some crises at the same time. So, Jason, we've seen this happening for quite some time. Karine Jean-Pierre likes to say, no, the border is secure, the numbers are going down, but in fact, the numbers are higher than they've ever been. So did the president's trip do anything to stem the tide?
No, it's done nothing. Look, Joe Biden inherited the most secure border in U.S. history. He intentionally and maliciously terminated all the protections that were put in place by the previous administration in order to implement his open border policies. And the result has been a humanitarian crisis of biblical proportions. There's been over 4.3 million illegal immigrants that have showed up to the southern border since Joe Biden took office. We've apprehended over 16 million pounds of fentanyl this past year alone that could kill up to 3.3 billion people. And the cartels have turned human trafficking into a $13 billion industry. So if Kevin McCarthy, the new Speaker of the House, and the GOP are serious about holding this president and his administration accountable, in my opinion, they need to impeach Joe Biden on this issue alone.
Well, it is a pretty serious issue, Kevin. I mean, you can't deny that. The president can't deny it. That's why he's there. But what I find to be very curious is he tasked the vice president with solving the border crisis. And if she can't do that, then at least coming up with a few keywords that they can call the root causes. So why wasn't the vice president there with him? And will they ever be honest about what the real root causes are?
Well, Kennedy, it's a good question. Listen, the vice president was with the president in the Roosevelt Room last week. I think that was actually more impactful in terms of what the president announced with the expansion of Title 42, removing those folks under that law, providing for additional spots for legal migration from those 4 key countries, an additional 300 Border Patrol agents as part of the federal funding bill, and of course the president's visit to El Paso on Sunday. These are all good starting points. I was actually encouraged to see the Texas governor down there with some ideas that he presented to the president. I'm hopeful that the president will respond to those. You have a bipartisan Senate delegation heading to the border tomorrow. Chris Murphy's part of that, among others.
I'm actually more hopeful about that than the president's visit, because they did just sanitize the area. He didn't talk to any migrants. Like, if you want people's story, ask them. They'll tell you about the root causes. They'll tell you what's happening. But, you know, I guess those simple peasants from faraway lands are just too filthy to shake the hands of our fearless leader. So let's talk about this a little bit. Olivia, the president has been there. It's not going to do anything. If, you know, Kevin says it's a starting point, but 2 years into your first term seems like a pretty late start to me.
It is abhorrent. It's a humanitarian crisis, and you're right. They didn't want to talk to the actual migrants. They view them as, I believe that they view them as not even human. It's inhumane. They just clear them out like they don't even matter. And I think that because the answer is so clear, because it's like, please visit the border, secure the border, bring back Title 42, enforce Title 42, enforce deportations, because they won't do simply that, because they know that enough fentanyl to kill, you know, the entire population of America is literally coming through the border. They are clearly on some type of payroll. I mean, I'm just going to say, I mean, the answer is so clear that if they cut off the stream of migrants coming through the border, if they cut off the stream of drugs and crime coming through the border, then their income source would be cut. I mean, it's true that on both sides of the border, the cartels work with the government to, you know, drug traffic and human traffic, and that's what it is. It's human rights abuse.
Yeah, someone is getting enriched here. And, you know, the big winner in this story, not the president, certainly not the vice president, it's the cartels. Bang up job, federal government. All right, well, President Biden's border pit stop was really only about one thing, let's be honest. Trying to make himself look good. He'll need an embalmer for that. The president reportedly, quote, all in to run again in 2024. It actually might be a slow waddle. His team said to be prepping an announcement in February, right around the State of the Union. Senior aides supposedly pushing the president out on these so-called bipartisan photo ops while the House was in turmoil over the speaker election. But will the president be able to rein in the far left wing of his own party enough to run as a moderate in 2024? Jason, I certainly hope not, because when any one party marches in lockstep, you get presidents like Joe Biden. I don't think that's a good thing.
Yeah, look, and Kennedy, he ran as a moderate in 2020, right? So look, the DNC knew that they had no viable two-term candidate in 2020. That's why they chose the most compromised, complicit, compliant, and corrupt candidate that they could, with the intent of doing as much damage as they could in the allotted amount of time. And I don't believe the American people are going to extend that allotted amount of time to Joe Biden in 2024. Look, nothing has been built back better. In fact, what I believe we've seen over the last couple of years under Joe Biden's leadership is the controlled demolition of our country. That's why over 71% of this country thinks we're headed in the wrong direction. So for me, I don't believe that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee in 2024.
I don't either. I really don't, Kevin. And, you know, there are people who say Democrats have a shallow bench. Do you believe that to be the case, Kevin?
I think we've got a great bench. I think, you know, you just saw Gretchen Whitmer reelected overwhelmingly in Michigan. Josh Shapiro, Attorney General of Pennsylvania, now the new governor of that Commonwealth. So, you know, we've got great candidates up and down the ballot. I think the president is itching to run again, wants to run again, went to the, you know, St. Croix to talk it over with his family, has come back energized from that vacation and ready to run. And he's got 2 years of legislative accomplishments to do that. The number of judicial appointments he's made, bipartisan victories. You mentioned in the intro, Kennedy, you know, the fact that Mitch McConnell shared the same stage with him just, you know, this past week, highlighting the infrastructure bill that they passed. So the president is going to go to a lot of ribbon cuttings, is going to talk about all the things that Democrats have done. Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
The things
so,
that the Democrats have done over these last 2 years.
Okay, to Jason's point, why do 70% of people polled consistently say the country is going in the wrong direction if what you're saying is true? Because if I could take what you're saying at face value, they would be saying the opposite. 70% of people, if they lived Democrat talking points, would be saying the country is amazing. This is the best time to be alive. But they're like, holy hell, I can't pay my gas bill. I'm swallowed up by debt. I don't have $1,000 in case there's an emergency, says 60% of the country. So how do you square those two things?
Yeah, it's a good point, Kennedy. I mean, that 60% number, Americans are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
But I think what the president is going to say is, listen, we've passed these policies over these last 2 years with Democratic control. A lot of these policies are kicking in right now, like Medicare able to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs. Americans are going to start to see their drug prices go down. We're going to get the inflation report on Thursday. Hopefully that's tacking in the right direction, because these policies, it's not immediate in terms of these large policies that the Democrats have passed. We need to give time for them to be implemented, and we'll see over these next years.
That's all we need.
If that change,
we can read the bill once we pass it. All we need is time. Olivia, do you buy that?
Not at all. And I don't think anyone who's paying attention really buys it, because we saw Biden attempt to run as a centrist in 2020, and it did fool a lot of people. And unfortunately for us, a good portion of American voters are not paying attention. But fortunately for us, I do think that the last 2 years saw a lot of moderates, centrist, more moderate and centrist-leaning Democrats actually wake up to that fact. And I don't think anyone in that camp who's been paying attention actually thinks that Joe Biden is a moderate just because he was pictured with Mitch McConnell. And I don't think a lot of centrists or independents or moderates really like Mitch McConnell that much either.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think this whole...
We can agree on that for sure.
This whole Kevin McCarthy fiasco, I think it betrays a lot of frustration in Washington, and it actually provided a roadmap for other leaders and other parties. And you know what? I hope they take them up on that offer. Panel, please don't go anywhere. It's a super hot Monday night. You'll need oven mitts for the remote, so don't use it. Coming up, Kevin McCarthy may be finally holding that greasy speaker's gavel, but is he really the winner of this weekend's dramatic speakership battle. We'll break it down. The winners, the losers, with the greatest winner of them all, Katie Pavlich. She's next.